What's up, YouTube? It's Russ with Wrenching with Russ. Today we're going to show you how to do the rotors, pads, and calipers front and rear on a 2013 Ford Mustang. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is you want to take your wheel off. That's a no-brainer. Once you got your wheel off, the next thing you want to do is you want to take this caliper off. So you take the bottom bolt out. This is going to raise straight up. And then next thing you want to do, you're going to pull your pads out. But you can see this driver's pads are pretty skinned. There's not much left of them. And then once you get your pads out, you're going to slide this caliper off. And you're just going to push straight to the side. That's all there is to taking the caliper off. Now you got your pads off, you got your caliper off. Next thing you're going to take off is your bracket. And then you want to make sure that you place your caliper out of the way so it don't bust you in the head. And there's two bolts hold this bracket on right here. So the next thing you want to do is you just want to pull this bracket off. I think it was a 15 millimeter. Alright, next thing you want to do is you want to pull this rotor off. And they come from the factory with a little metal clip on there that holds them on when it goes down the assembly line. Just give it a good yank, it'll come off. And point right there to it. It'll come right off. Once you get that off, you take your rotor off. Now we're going to start replacing parts. The next thing you want to do is you're going to clamp off your rubber brake line. And you don't want to do it too hard, but you want to do it firm enough you're going to stop the flow of that brake fluid. Now we're going to change the caliper out. So you want to catch this fluid because it'll eat just about anything it touches up. So now that you've got this in place, get your oil drip pan. And we're going to replace this caliper. Our problem with this car was the calipers were hung up and they weren't free floating and the pistons were stuck. So it was eating one side of the brake pad up. So here's what you want to do. You want to take this off at the bottom. This hose connects on the bottom of this caliper. And then you're going to take this line off. And any residual is going to drip down in your pan. Now we're going to start reversing the process. Here's the part you need. And these come with the brackets and they come with the caliper. It's all one piece. They also come with a new bolt and two copper washers. And we'll show you how to put that on. Next thing you want to do is put your rotor on. And what we like to do is we'll just take one of the lug nuts and we'll put it back on there just to hold this rotor straight up and down so it's not flopping all over the place. Okay, so now you got that in place. You got your rotor holding on there like it should. We're going to reassemble everything. So now that your rotor's on, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to replace the bracket. This is the first thing you want to do. You want to grease all these pins up that go to this bracket. Because you got to make sure they're going to slide. So you remount your bracket. You put your two bolts back in. And then this pin here, you want to make sure it's greased good because it has to float. So now you got your bracket bolted back up. You want to put your clips in there. And I always replace clips, put new ones in it. It comes with it anyway. And there's 4 spots for these clips. And they just snap in. Each corner has a spot. All right, now you got those in. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to put your new caliper on. So you mount your new caliper. Don't put your brake pads in. Just mount your new caliper so it won't slide on you. And now we're going to put the new bolt in for your fluid line. So just set your caliper up on the bracket. And then this new caliper comes with a new bolt and new copper washers. Make sure you use those. Don't reuse your old hardware. So this is the new bolt. And I'll show you the two copper washers that come with it. Make sure you put these copper washers one on each side. They don't go stacked together. You take one off, you place it into the bracket, into the hose line, and then you put your other copper washer on the other side. Now you remount it to the caliper. Make sure you don't cross thread this. It's easy to do. And then another thing you want to concentrate too, you want to make sure that your line is not kinked, and make sure it's straight, and it's a squared out end, so it'll notch right on the end of that. So make sure that you got it setting correctly, just like I'm showing you there. Okay, now you got that done. Make sure your line's tight and snug. You're going to put your brake pads in. Of course, your brake pads are just going to line up and slide in. Sometimes you have to grind the ends of them down because from the factory they don't always come where they fit, so you might have to take a little bit off each end. Now you got those. You want to grease this top pin because again we want to make sure everything slides. You got your brake pads in your bracket. Now you're going to put your caliper back on. It goes all the way up, and then you just slide it over, and then make sure you're seated over your brake pads. Just like that, and it'll snap in at the bottom. Now you put your bottom bolt in, and there's the finished product. And that's how you change the front rotors, pads, and caliper. Now the last thing you're going to do is you want to bleed these brakes off because you're going to have air in the system from opening them up. We take the bleeder valve out until we start seeing fluid coming out of the bleeder valve. It's gravity bleed is what they call it. And then you want to make sure your reservoir at the top is continually full. Don't let it go dry. Once you get good fluid flowing out of this, you put your bleeder valve back in and then just double check, make sure everything floats. Now we're going to show you how to do the back brakes. You do everything like you did on the front brakes with the exception of this piston on this caliper. And I'm going to show you right here. This piston here doesn't push back, it actually turns. So you're going to need to get the tool from either Advanced or AutoZone. They'll rent it to you. So everything's the same. You're going to take your rotor off, replace your rotor. You're going to take your bracket off, replace the bracket, and put your pads in. Now we're going to hand turn this, and this compresses this piston back. And you want to take this piston all the way back flush. And be careful not to tear your boot, because these rubber boots get a little dry and they'll rip, and then you'll lose the fluid. So you want to make sure that you continually go slow and you kind of go forward, go backwards until you get it lined up. And it will push back. It's going to take some effort, but once you got it back, it's the exact same system. You make sure your brake pads are lined up, and then you put your caliper back onto your bracket. There's two bolts that hold it on, and then you bolt your caliper back on, and that's the whole thing. And as always, why pay someone thousands of dollars when you can do it yourself?